So in my recent work, I was working with a child who had anxiety, who had anger, and who was also hyperactive. So the goal which we fixed was, we'll complete all of these emotional challenges, we'll make sure it gets over, and then we'll also make sure he starts focusing at studies. So in 2 sessions spanning over 2 months, his hyperactivity stopped. His hyperactivity included beating people, throwing things, and I was little apprehensive working with him, because I was also informed that in between the session he may hit you, or he may throw things, but none of this happened, and we worked very well. So in 2 months, where we had 2 sessions, all of this completely stopped. And in the 3rd month, I asked the client the feedback, the parents of the client, and one of the person was like, nothing has changed, he's not working, he's not focusing in studies, and blah blah blah. And we had a conversation for 10 minutes, and in those 10 minutes all he was telling is that he's not studying, he's not focusing at work, he's not even touching his books, but meanwhile I asked what and all he's doing. So I figured out that his anger has completely stopped, his hyperactivity has stopped, he's stopped beating people, stopped throwing things, and he's also started a lot of sports activity, and which was something I was like, okay, this I didn't expect. But what happens is, once we do internal changes in unconscious of a person, the limitations dissolve, and once the limitations have dissolved, it opens up new possibilities. So what we missed out, or what we had to work in upcoming months, because it was a 6-month project, was teaching him how to focus in studies. While even before we went towards that, one of the parent of the client started complaining for no reason, and I was like, hold on, what are your measurements? My measurement was where the client has started, where he was having all of these challenges. 2 months down the lane, he was having none of the emotional challenges, but we had to work a couple of more months, maybe 2 or 3 sessions, where we teach him how to focus better. But even before that, prematurely, the client was complaining that nothing is working, and when we tell nothing, it also means that none of the changes has worked. While when I verified it with the client, when I verified it with the client's family, they were very happy that he stopped doing the anger challenges. That's when I found that here the problem is not just with the client, it is also the client's parents, because for them the only measurement their children can grow is by getting good marks. Now this is a very weird measurement, because this is influenced from the society, because they're comparing their child with the other children in the neighborhood who are getting different marks. They're comparing the child with the society, which is very based on the school marks and what the child is performing in terms of education, not the talent improvement, or not the talent identification in the person. So I had to change the belief of the client and change the measurements of the client even before working with the child, because here I found that the client's parents were installing negative framework in the child's growth, because the growth is not just this school growth, but it is also growth about interpersonal skills, developing their talents. I saw him, he has interest in sports and all of it. So now this was a major challenge with me. So in the 3rd session, I was like, I don't want the child to come, you both as parents please come. And then we sat, we had discussions, we had arguments, we had disagreements, and finally I was able to convince the client's parents that growth is not just about getting good marks. It is also about where your child has started and where he is going. So if we compare where he has started, where he is now, it's a huge growth. A person who used to beat people, who was getting angry and throwing things, and all sorts of problems this person is creating, now this person has become very calm, composed, and spending a lot of time in sports. Now all we have to do is make sure he starts focusing in the studies. While the same thing, I find a similar pattern with a lot of people I meet. They have comparison of their personal life's growth with other people. Like a lot of CA, CS, UPSC aspirants I meet, they compare their marks, they compare their performances with the other students they have studied together. While they have to understand that the real comparison is where you have started, where you are now, and where you're going to go in future. You have to keep the timeline very clear, point 1, point 2, and the end goal. That is why you have real life calibration, real life observation of where you are going towards. Well, the same thing also happens with new entrepreneurs. Now there are two different entrepreneurs, they have two different ecosystem. One person is starting from the scratch, one person is building on his family business, and in 2 years down the lane both reach at different pinnacles. Now at this point in time, if you compare with the other person, if the person has performed better than you, you will feel insecure, you will feel nervous, you will feel bad, you will feel failure, even after being super successful in achieving whatever you wanted to. And if the person has underperformed in your comparison, you're going to look down upon the person and make sure you have this feeling in you that, hey, that person hasn't performed, and this also means that I've performed great. But this is not a way to compare at all. This is a flawed measurement system. One of the best ways your personal growth can be compared is where you have started, where you are now, how was the journey, and what are you going to do in the future. Otherwise, if you're going to compare with people who are very unique, because the other person you're comparing, his ecosystem or her ecosystem may be different, the resources may be different, and the efforts also may be different, and the talent and everything else is different. So how do you think on the earth you can compare two different individuals and come to conclusions? And all of this leads to creating a lot of disappointment and internal friction. And imagine you worked very hard, you achieved your initial success. At this point in time, you got to celebrate your success and take feedbacks and march ahead. But instead of doing that, you're comparing your life with other people and disappointing yourself. And imagine every time you achieved something, you got to motivate yourself so that you can do more of it. Instead of that, you're disappointing yourself, and now these emotions are not gonna push you or motivate you to work. And this is one of the reasons I found that a lot of people procrastinate, and a lot of people are not motivated to work even after they've achieved a lot, because you're measuring your life wrong. And once you start measuring it in a right way, you'll find a lot of bliss, a lot of fun, and you'll be happy about working whatever you are working at. So make sure you correct your measurements.